My husband and I have been married for 39 years and we have always lived happily ever after. We shared many joys and challenges and had a very strong bond. Then, he was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer that changed our lives dramatically. We didn't give up and worked hard to try various treatments in hopes of beating the disease. We sought the advice of doctors and even considered removing one of his lungs. But the doctor was adamantly against it. The risk of such an operation was too high for someone who was already 68 years old. We felt very helpless in the face of the harsh reality, but we continued to love each other until he left this world. Our love became our motivation to overcome the difficulties. Each remaining day became so precious. The day he passed away is a day I will never forget. My husband was lying in bed. His eyes revealed a calmness. He whispered to me that he was going home and that he would see me again later. I held his hand and felt his palms grow weak. At that moment, I knew he was saying goodbye to me. His words were very hard for me, and I realized that he was about to leave this world. As his hand gradually loosened, my heart seemed to break with it. His breathing was getting weaker, and his face was gradually turning pale. I felt a sense of despair, unwilling to accept the fact that he was about to leave. That night, as I lay in bed, my heart was filled with sadness and anger. I cursed God. Why did you take my most beloved person away from me? Why did he keep us apart? My life suddenly became dark and meaningless. I didn't know how I was going to face the rest of my life. I tried to find strength and courage, but every time I thought of his departure, tears kept flowing. A month later, I was in deep grief. The loss of my husband made me unable to face the reality that I no longer ate on time or cared about my health. I used to be very exercise-oriented, but now I hardly do any outdoor activities anymore. All I wanted was to be with my husband, and my thoughts of him made me very depressed. I began to alienate my children and stopped interacting with them. Every object and corner of the house reminded me of him. My health condition gradually deteriorated, but I didn't realize that I had a health problem. Every day, I cursed God and blamed him for taking my husband away from me. After some time, I finally mustered the courage to visit my husband's grave. Though walking became a struggle, I decided to visit him because I missed him so much. As I walked there with a bouquet of flowers, I saw a man standing in front of the grave. As I approached, the person disappeared. I didn't pay much attention to it, maybe I was just hallucinating. I stood at my husband's grave and stared at the name on the headstone. I said to his grave, "Baby, I'm so sorry that this is the first time I've come to see you. I've missed you so much." I gently stroked the name on the headstone as if I could feel my husband's presence. I placed flowers on my husband's headstone. I sighed deeply. As I was getting ready to go home, I was surprised to see the man standing by the grave again. I was a little confused and then rubbed my eyes. The man's appearance was so familiar, but I couldn't identify him. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my chest that hurt so much that I couldn't stand up. My breathing was rapid and difficult, and my vision began to blur. I felt my body become abnormally weak, as if I was bound by some invisible force. Everything happened so suddenly that I felt very frightened and helpless. Finally, I lost consciousness and fell into darkness. In this endless darkness, I felt a kind of peace. I no longer felt pain or fear. Perhaps this is what death feels like. After a while, I saw a bright light. It swept me in like a tornado. I was pulled by an invisible force, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape its attraction. I had no idea where it was taking me. Finally, I came to another place. It was filled with a love that could not be described in words. It was a feeling I had never experienced before. In this place, I felt forgiven and accepted without any burden. This feeling taught me the true meaning of life. In this world of love, I felt connected to everything. I suddenly heard a familiar voice that turned out to be my own. I heard myself cursing God over and over again, which surprised me. I was surprised that I had said such a thing, and I was a religious person. I was born into a Christian family and attended church regularly as a child. My father was a devout Christian who taught me to be kind and forgiving. I was supposed to have a devout heart and believe in God's love and mercy. However, I couldn't help but feel remorseful and guilty when I heard myself cursing God. I didn't understand why I had said such things. In addition to these voices, I heard what I had said to my husband during an argument, and I heard what I had said to my children. These words were amplified hundreds of times. These words were uttered when I was emotionally out of control, and it shocked and shamed me. When I couldn't take it anymore, I cried out to God for forgiveness. Miraculously, the voices immediately disappeared, as if my cries had touched some kind of power. Then I found myself at the bottom of a throne. The light here was so bright. I slowly adjusted to the intense glow, before I began to see that there was a man sitting on the throne. The man was tall and stately, but I couldn't make out his face, only a vague outline. He radiated an intense energy that made me feel awe and peace. In his presence, I had no secrets to hide. He could see through all my joys and pains, all my goodness and evil. I know that he is not accusing me, but forgiving me. He understands my inner struggles and imperfections, and he is willing to accept me as I am. In his presence, I feel an unconditional love, a love that transcends time and space. He said to me, "I have heard your curse on me. I brought you here so that you could vent those resentments." When I heard this, I felt fear and embarrassment. Then I couldn't help but tell the truth. "Yes, I admit I said those things. I think you took my husband away from me. He was my life, he was everything to me, and you took that away from me." Then, the man continued, "You were right, I brought him home. His time on earth is over because he has done everything he wanted to do." This statement left me in deep thought. God explained that your husband wanted to do two things in his life: marry his soul mate and raise his children with the person he loves most. And his favorite person is me. Hearing those words touched my heart so much. Then I couldn't help but ask, "Is he here?" God answered, "Yes." This answer filled my heart with joy and anticipation. I said to God, "Can I see him again?" After a long time, I finally got my answer. God said, "You can see him again." At this moment, my emotions became mixed. There was the anticipation and joy of seeing him again, and there was also the longing and sadness of his departure. I wanted to see him again, to communicate with him, to tell him that I had been thinking about him. We passed a lake that was the clearest I had ever seen. Then we went through another pasture. Everywhere we went, every place was so beautiful. Then God also took me to a place he had prepared for others. I saw one beautiful garden after another. Each place had a unique view. Finally, we came to the place he had prepared for my husband and me. The place looked exactly like our house on earth. This familiar scene made me feel like I was back in the old days. I saw my husband watering the flowers in the garden, and he was intently busy. God whispered to me to go and talk to him. I walked over to him, and when he looked up, a look of surprise crossed his face. "Why are you here? Your time hasn't come yet," he asked. I replied, "I don't know what happened or why I'm here. I really don't know." "You can't be here yet, you have to go back," said my husband. I struggled to explain that I miss you and that life without you is meaningless. "You have to go back for the sake of our children," my husband said, hugging me. "They need you. We will meet again." He kissed me gently on the cheek. I stayed with my husband for a long time. We reminisced about the good times we had together. It felt as if we were back in time. He still told the same old jokes, just like in the past. The feeling was so familiar and warm. There we were free from any constraints, we could communicate to our heart's content and feel each other's love and warmth. There seemed to be a tacit understanding between our souls, and we could communicate with our hearts without the limitations of time and space. However, I had to leave for a while. I know that our meeting is only temporary, and we still have our respective missions. Even though we were about to part, our love would always connect us. When I awoke, I found myself passed out at my husband's grave. A janitor helped me up. He asked with concern, "Are you okay?" I replied, "Yes, I'm fine." How long had I been passed out? The administrator told me about 2 minutes. The administrator asked if I needed to call an ambulance, which I declined. I said I could walk home by myself. These past 5 years have not been easy for me. The loss of my husband has caused me a lot of mental stress and pain. Every year on my birthday, I lament the passage of time. I believe my husband has been waiting for me in heaven. His departure has not made me feel lonely, on the contrary, I feel his companionship and guardianship. I believe that in the near future, I will be reunited with him again and our souls will be reconnected. Although I miss my husband, I also realize that I need to cherish every moment of my life. I will continue to influence those around me with love and kindness. I look forward to the day when I will be reunited with my husband again. I am confident that at some point in the future, our souls will meet in heaven.